so good to see so many of you here. Glad for us all to be back together. And today's topic is something very interesting because we're going to talk about keys to self-worth. And this topic impacts our lives and well-being, as well as the well-being of everyone else in our circle, everyone we encounter. Self-worth is key. And what is self-worth? Now, if we look at the published literature, it says self-worth is a feeling that you are a good person who deserves to be treated with respect. It is a feeling that you are a good person that deserves to be treated with respect. And I think this is a lovely, simple definition which encapsulates something each and every one of us seeks from life. Another definition says, your sense of self-worth helps you to trust your own judgment and make better decisions. Your sense of self-worth helps you to trust your own judgment and make better decisions. Last year we did a class on ego and self-esteem. And when we talked about self-esteem, again, we broached the subject of self-worth from other angles. And I would recommend that you go back and revisit that video. It's called Ego and Self-Esteem, because in light of what I'm going to share with you today, that will be a really nice way to refresh your memories of other angles, which I'm not covering today. Because today I'd like to cover a very significant one. Just one angle, but a key angle. So I would like to filter down self-worth to something very basic and yet critical. Self-worth comes from feeling relevant. In inverted commas, feeling relevant. And feeling relevant is a very basic need that each one of us has. And if feeling relevant is so important to us, we need to also examine our behavior to see how we make others feel. Do we make them feel relevant? Or do we boost our ego and make others feel irrelevant in pursuit of being the most relevant person in the room? Where are we? And we're all in different postures. When I spoke to a group of youths many years ago, I asked them, if you are a tree living in a forest and you want to make yourself the tallest tree in the forest, what would you do? And the answers were a good mix of perspectives. One said, I would cut all the rest of the trees down, and hence I would be the only tall one that remains. Now, this answer resonates with what I said earlier about ego, where you cut everyone else's relevance down so that you can be the most relevant person in the room. Another young lady said, I would work hard and better myself and grow through that. And I said, that's fine, but how do you get to be the tallest tree then? Because if every tree in the forest works as hard as you, I said, then you would all grow equally, so you would not be the tallest tree. That's right, she said. She said, being the tallest tree is unimportant in a forest because the first bolt of lightning in a storm could strike me down. Why would I want that? If I were the tallest tree, every storm would hit me the hardest. Why would I want that? If all trees grow equally, our forest would be strong and we would all survive the worst of storms together, she says. And we would also thrive in days of sunshine together because we would all get our fair share of sunlight. And I sat back and thought, what a mature perspective this young lady had shared. A lot of wisdom in a young teenager. Now, drawing from her perspective, in terms of relevance, each one of us seeks to be relevant and grow our self-worth, whilst respecting others around us and making them feel relevant too. Now, with this approach, you can imagine how positive an effect we would have on all our relationships if we made others feel relevant as we would like to feel relevant, rather than cut to the chase, be dismissive, rush, be ignorant of the fact that we are making others irrelevant. Suppose we made being relevant a cornerstone of 2022, and make our lives go in that direction for ourselves and for all those around us. And the reactions of those around us that we make to feel relevant are so positive that they make our own self-worth grow leaps and bounds. Because if those around you are made to feel good by your words and actions, you grow with it at the same time. So let us explore the concept of being relevant a bit further. And I'd like to share with you how delicate and yet impactful a subject this can be. When I was in my mid-20s, I remember with great fondness a man who I looked up to as a role model. He was a great leader and inspired us all to be our best. Then he turned 65, and under Canadian law, the company he worked for gave him mandatory retirement. Suddenly, this man, whose every word mattered so much to everyone, went into a state of reclusion. He felt less relevant each day, and I watched his self-worth drop like a lead balloon. Just that loss of relevance. He truly felt discarded. The circumstances around his retirement made him feel as though no one needed him anymore. In fact, every time our children had a project that involved skills like carpentry, for example, which he was very good at, we would ask him to come over and help, and he would absolutely love that. You could see how happy he was when someone needed him, in inverted commas. He felt relevant again, and you could see that switch of happiness appear on his face, all about feeling relevant. And this is the crux that governs our spirit. His loved ones often said, "We're so happy he is retired. Now he can do whatever he wants." But few recognized what he wanted and needed the most was to feel relevant. Even with the best of intentions in mind, we can unknowingly make people feel totally irrelevant, and it can destroy their self-worth, and we do not even know we've done it. So we all need to be very mindful of this as we embark into 2022. Because if we want to make our world a better place, let us start by respecting the importance of making people feel relevant. This lovely man I'm talking about unfortunately spiraled down and then was later afflicted by dementia or Alzheimer's, no one really knows. And he passed away a few years later. So how many of us have aging parents? Let us think about how relevant they feel and what we can do to make them feel more relevant. I know my mother absolutely loves to cook for her family and friends and loved ones, and we always encourage that. And you can see the visible impact on her self-worth when she sees others enjoying her food. She's beaming, she's smiling because she's needed, she's relevant. How many other elderly people does each one of us know? Let's think about how we can make their lives happier by making them feel relevant. Very important. Then we can take a step down in age and let us look at our partner, our spouse, our close loved ones, and let us ask ourselves, how relevant do they make us feel? Think about it, because this could be a key to creating change that can lead to greater freedom and happiness in our existing relationships. If we don't feel relevant, what can we do to change that? How do we express this to our closest ones? If they don't know how we feel, how can they help us? And next we have to look at our closest loved ones and ask ourselves, how relevant do we make them feel? Are we unfairly dismissive towards them? Are we too buried like ostriches whose heads are in the mud to recognize their needs? If we are, now is a great time to change things. Next, we should also look at the conflicted relationships in our family and friend circle. How many of these conflicts arise from people being made to feel irrelevant? Now, as we enter this new year, let us explore each one of our relationships from this perspective and fix what needs fixing. It's a great time and a great opportunity. And we now have something to focus on: relevance, being relevant. I remember when Karima and I were raising our children, they were really young, uh, 4 and 6, or no, 6, 4, and 2. That's right. And we were raising our children, but we always asked their opinion before we made any key decision about where we lived, how we decorated our home, what food we would serve our guests if when they were to come, where we should go on holiday. We consulted them, regardless of their age. They were so young at the time, like I said, 6, 4, and 2. And even if their answers did not prove useful, the fact that they were consulted made their self-worth grow leaps and bounds. And my dear friends, the question, a simple question like, in inverted commas, what do you think? What do you think? When you ask someone that, can be more soothing than all the balms in the world put together. It's a very soothing question. What do you think? Because now the person you are addressing feels relevant. They feel they matter. And so this is something I'd really like us all to think about. When I was growing up in the late 60s, in the 60s, my parents' generation believed that the best way to make children excel was by making them compete against each other. And they unknowingly lit fires that still burn in people's lives today. The child who lost in that competition was made to feel irrelevant, and the ones who won got all the attention. Thank God, most of us have unlearned this behavior. Our previous generations meant well, bless them, but I'm simply shining the spotlight on how unknowingly abused the concept of relevance can be, and with the best of intentions in mind, and also how long-lasting the impact of these actions are. So knowing this, we can approach healing of relationships within our family and loved ones that may have started on the wrong footing in our earlier days, in our childhood, in our youth. We can start restoring the relevance of our loved ones that may have drifted away for whatever reason. But this is one way to bring them all back together. And the good news is that it is possible, regardless of our age. And I have mentioned in a previous webinar that during my career, whenever we developed any new technologies and environmental solutions, everyone in the room was given a chance to share their thoughts, regardless of their rank, whether you were the vice president or you were down to the person who's cleaning the office. Everyone was given a chance to speak. No idea was ever considered a bad one, and the best ones were carried forward. And everyone left the meetings feeling fulfilled because they had been heard. They had felt relevant. Builds that team spirit as well. If you are leading a group, or whether it be volunteers, or whether it be your career, or make people feel relevant. And that's how you all grow as a team, as people grow. And with that, you will grow yourself. Now let us encapsulate how we are going to apply the concept of being relevant today and in the future. Let's encapsulate it further. Let's divide relevance into 3 aspects. The first one is physical relevance. Now, what do I mean by physical relevance? The reason we all want to look good is to feel relevant physically. We want our presence to have a positive impact on others, and the attention we receive from them makes us feel physically relevant. This is why the beauty and fitness industries have done so well in the world. They make us feel physically relevant. Looking after our health, exercising, keeping well, taking the time to look good, all this adds to our sense of physical relevance, and hence self-worth. You see people with size 0 bodies really working out, having done so well, sometimes dressed totally skimpily, not sure about that. But they love the attention that they get, and it makes them feel physically relevant. So people will sometimes pay a huge price and often go to great lengths of discomfort and suffering to feel physically relevant. And for example, people who don't feel physically relevant, many of them go on extreme and damaging diets that completely hurt them emotionally, physically, or having series of invasive surgeries, etc., etc. Maybe if we as a society were to start to accept the importance of making ourselves and others feel relevant, then paying such prices might not be necessary. Unfortunately, we are not there yet, and I'm not sure how long it'll take us to get there. But thinking about this subject is a great step towards creating positive change. Then we come to the second one, and this second aspect is being mentally and emotionally relevant. This one is a bit more complicated than being physically relevant, which is easily seen and appreciated. Mental and emotional relevance are often very closely intertwined, and you can't tell them apart. Physical relevance can be achieved by one's own self-confidence, or through the influence of others. Mental and emotional relevance are also of a similar nature. You can build your own relevance or derive it through others. So the rules are the same. Now, what makes us feel mentally or emotionally relevant? I would say, to start with, a strong sense of self-worth is a great way to begin. When we walk into our room with confidence, because we believe in ourselves and the value of our words and actions, we make ourselves mentally and emotionally relevant. This is actually a powerful state of being. And you may ask, how can I achieve this? And I would suggest working with your anchor thought. As you know, I have addressed the topic of anchor thought many times. And it is about setting your mind and state of being the way you wish it to be. So if I were to say to you, how are you? And you say to me, I'm fine, that's the most worthless answer you can give me. But if you've anchored yourself in a state of happiness, and I ask you, how are you? You will say, I'm happy, or I am at peace, or I have clarity, I'm clarity, or, I am abundance, whatever. But you must anchor your thoughts to create that state of being. And when you anchor yourself in confidence and clarity, that's what you will project when you walk into a room and start saying what you have to say. So now is a good time to revisit the meditation audio and start practicing it. It's called The Art of Anchor Thought. And, work with it, revive it if you haven't been practicing it, because it is an absolutely invaluable life tool. Many of you who have practiced it have come back with feedback that it has really given you a chance to control your own state of being, rather than bouncing around life like an accidental object, feeling what you feel because you happen to be in a certain situation or circumstance. No, take control, use anchor thought. Now, the more relevant you can make yourself feel, the more free and independent you will become. So mental and emotional relevance can be something you can create for yourself with anchor thought, or it can also be derived from others. When people show that they care about us and they care about what we have to say, we feel emotionally and mentally relevant. When people ask for our opinions and thoughts, we feel counted, we feel relevant. When we are given the respect that we feel we deserve, emotionally and mentally, we gain relevance. When we are treated with kindness and love, same thing, we feel relevant. But these things don't just happen by themselves. They are earned. They have to be worked upon. When our daughters were young, they used to hate the daily world affairs session that they used to have with me every evening, because I forced it on them. Every evening I'd sit down with them and say, okay, You've read the newspapers, you watch the news, let's talk about the important stuff. And I would not cut them any slack. So they had to watch the news and they had to be up to date. And they thought it was a total waste of their time. Then they grew up and then they began to enjoy it. And today they can sit in a room and express well informed opinions that people want to hear. Each one of them has thanked me for that when they've grown up, because having experienced how relevant it makes them feel in the presence of others. So, being relevant also takes work from our part. This is just an example. At the time, I was unpopular, but my key message to them was be well informed on whatever subjects interest you. And because that way, people will welcome your input. And when people welcome your input, you are relevant. One time I was coaxed, I walked into the living room and the elderly members of our family were watching an Indian soap opera called Kitty Party, and I was coaxed into sitting and watching an episode with them. And there was pure gossip in that show. And, the people who shared the most gossip got the most attention. Now, I'd recommend we avoid the kitty party type solution as far as possible. But the key is we draw from the fact that if we want to be relevant, we have to have something useful to say, actions that are appreciated, a state of being that is respected and liked. When you are at peace and you're anchored in love, people want to be around you. So being relevant also takes that kind of effort from our side, and you can do a lot more. I'm just throwing a couple of ideas at you. So we keep away from the kitty party stuff, but work on everything else. And I think feeling mentally and emotionally relevant also has much to do with our state of being and how we manage our thoughts and emotions in our lives, and also through the lives of the people in our circle. So let's make it an objective this year to start by fostering mental and emotional relevance. And we start from today. We can start by respecting the right of others to express their viewpoints. In fact, consciously inviting their viewpoints. That's number one. Number two, we can be good listeners, which makes others feel relevant. Or by being respectful of everyone else, regardless of their place in society, careers, or wherever they may be, totally respectful of everyone. Or by recognizing that mental and emotional relevance can be deeply fostered by love, because love has the power to fill all the voids that exist in our lives. Therefore, we can give and receive love. And how we do it is something we need to be consciously aware of at all times. Finally, because feeling something towards someone is one thing, but telling them is a huge step forward. So love is also a key. And do not be shy to express that love, that care, that compassion. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. It makes you loved, makes you wanted. It makes you relevant. And finally, if you find yourself feeling irrelevant or find yourself amongst people that dismiss you and make you feel irrelevant, there is no harm in peacefully disconnecting from those sort of relationships. Or in the worst case, walking away from those relationships or situations. There's no harm. It's because your self-worth is being diminished and not respected. And the longer you stay and surround yourself with that toxicity, the worse you feel, the unhappier you grow, the more you lose opportunities to realize your potential. So surround yourselves with people that are nurturing and that actually help build your relevance rather than are being dismissive towards you. So this would be something I would consider too. And we all have our ways of managing relationships. I'm just throwing it out there to think about. And there are many additional ways of building our mental and emotional relevance, and I will let you create your own list. of what you consider is important on how to achieve this. So, my dear friends, we cannot govern the actions and words of others, but we can govern how we react to them. So think about it. We cannot govern the actions and words of others, but we can govern how we react to them. And this is the key to maintaining a healthy state of mental and emotional self-worth. The subject of mental and emotional relevance is so broad that we cannot do it full justice in one webinar. But our goal today is simply to recognize that mental and emotional relevance are important aspects of our self-worth and hence well-being, and the self-worth of all those around us and the well-being of others around us. The third key aspect to consider, because we have done physical, we have done mental, emotional, is spiritual relevance. And I'd like us to think a bit about this one. Because spiritual relevance is just as important as physical, mental, and emotional relevance. And I would argue that it is the most important form of relevance, because when we are fulfilled at the spiritual level, everything in the material level gets resolved and starts to fall into place. What is spiritual relevance? To understand this, let us reflect on the following questions. Number one, do we believe that we have a soul or higher self or some form of intelligence life force that keeps us alive? Do we believe that? If the answer is no, then you have to dig deeper to understand and define your life force in whatever language you choose, whether you even end up calling it a statistical coincidence. Call it something. Come to terms with it so that we all are on that same page of there being a source, a higher self, or some form of intelligent life force, or whatever you choose to call it. If the answer is yes, that you believe in that, then you have to ask yourself the question, how much recognition or thought do I give to my higher self or my soul? How much recognition or thought do I give to my higher self? How relevant is my higher self in my conscious thoughts? How relevant is my higher self in my conscious thoughts? How much time and effort do I devote to my higher self? How much time and effort do I devote to my higher self? These are three important questions. And if the answer to the above three questions is no, then one is spiritually irrelevant, because your higher self is largely ignored. It is no different to being physically, mentally, or emotionally ignored throughout your material journey. It's the same thing. Ignoring the higher self is exactly the same thing. This can happen when one is unknowingly over-immersed in the material plane to have the time or headspace to recognize the spiritual dimension of oneself. This can happen unknowingly. We all get buried, we all get immersed, and we stop thinking of that really important dimension, making ourselves spiritually irrelevant. And most of us who are living with spiritual irrelevance are not happy deep down. We feel a void that nothing in our material lives can fill. We all know this is true. If the answers to my three questions above is yes, then one is happy and truly content from within. This type of person lives with pure abundance at all levels and is in fact a beacon of wisdom and light for others. Remember, true learning in this world comes from examples of actions, thoughts, and people. We learn from exemplary situations. Such people who answer yes to those three questions are exemplary beings, and they emulate to the rest of us what we should be, what we should aspire to be. Now, the good news is that those of us who wish to correct ourselves and become spiritually relevant, we can certainly achieve this goal. It's within reach, very easy, within reach. Now, how, you may ask? So firstly, we need to recognize that there is a deeper reason why most faiths of this world and spiritual schools of thought recommend regular prayer. When we take the time out of our busy schedules to sit down and focus on prayer, which is a form of higher thought that engages with the higher self, we gain spiritual relevance. So, prayer is one option, and it doesn't have to be ritualistic if you don't believe in rituals. It is a simple inner communication with your higher self. It is taking the time away from the busy schedule and focusing on your higher self, one that you may have ignored for a very long time. Time to change that. Just as the question, what do you think, brings so much happiness and relevance to the person who is asked the question in the material plane, similarly, the thought of the soul or higher self is equally nurturing for us spiritually. So think about it. The second way is through meditation. This is another powerful way of building our spiritual relevance. As we have all learned and practiced together over the last almost 2 years, we can meditate into a state of pure stillness and silence, and we've done that often together. And we can get to this state which has the same vibration level as our higher self. When we are completely still, we're completely silent, we are in the center of the cyclone. We're not bouncing around, we are in that same powerful center where our higher self exists. At this level, we can focus on words like oneness, oneness with the self. When you get to stillness and silence and just focus on oneness and oneness with the self, and think of that oneness deeply, with all other thoughts silenced away, you become part of the oneness. Or we can go deeper in meditation to the linkage level, where we focus on our linkage word that connects us to our source, our creator, who permeates our soul and higher self. So you can go deeper and still achieve the same goal of spiritual relevance. But this is the deeper form of connection, and we should all strive for it. So in essence, meditation is a key route to building spiritual relevance. The third one is anchor thought. So if we establish a positive and healthy state of being consciously throughout the day using our anchor thought, this can help engage both our material mind and our higher self. Now please revisit the recordings of video recordings of master classes 1, 2, and 3, and practice the guided audio meditation called Art of Anchor Thought. It's about 7 minutes, but it's really worth practicing. If you have not. If you have, then you already know what to do, so we keep moving forward. The fourth one is what I call higher inner communication. And this is a method where you constantly consult and speak with your higher self in your conscious state. So you're speaking to your higher self through every experience. You can make your higher self a constant part of your material consciousness. Talk to your higher self. Consult your higher self. This is a beautiful state of being. Just as when others talk to us and consult us, we feel relevant, the higher self is no different. Except that the greater spiritual relevance that you will build can transform our minds and thoughts. So spiritual relevance is more powerful than physical, mental, and emotional relevance. And this makes us go with the flow of life with less resistance because we are seeing things from a higher level. I mean, you've all flown, taken a flight. I remember one time I was on a plane at 35,000 feet looking down, and all I could see was a dot. But that dot was a hut or a house. And in the house was a human being who thought he or she was the center of the universe. But when I look at it from above, from that height, it's simply a dot. Perspectives change when you gain spiritual relevance. You realize from that height what is important and what is not. And you become more and more accepting, and you flow with life the way that brings you the richest of experiences. So spiritual relevance is really key. The fifth way is seeking the extraordinary in the ordinary. And we can consciously seek the extraordinary in the ordinary. And I've done an entire class on it. I think it's Master Class 4 or 3, the first ones. Where even when you look at a tree, you look at the tree, it's a beautiful creation. But seek the extraordinary. What is the life energy that flows in the tree? Stand before it, look at it, because that same life energy is flowing through you. You look at all forms of creation, small and large, and seek the extraordinary. If you make that a conscious quest in your day-to-day life, you will connect with all the beautiful life that surrounds us, which is the same as the life of our soul. And we can achieve oneness with all creation that way, by seeking the extraordinary in the ordinary. And I've explained how in those master classes. Because we are constantly then engaging our higher self in most powerful ways. And so, we can practice some or all of the above that I have just shared, which is prayer, meditation, using anchor thought to establish a strong and positive state of being through the day, constant inner communication with the self, and seeking the extraordinary in the ordinary. And this is how we empower ourselves spiritually, by becoming truly relevant, both in our material thoughts and in our spiritual communication. So I would like to conclude today's insight with a simple message that says, number one, seek to be relevant and make others feel relevant. Number two, build on your physical relevance. 3, shape your thoughts and govern your emotions to make yourself mentally and emotionally relevant. Number 4, surround yourself with people that nurture you and make you feel relevant. Number 5, build your spiritual relevance to a level that brings light, peace, and wisdom to every moment of your life. So, my dear friends, this is a key formula to building self-worth and achieving fulfillment and well-being. This was the insight I wish to share with you at the beginning of 2022. Wishing you all a very, very happy New Year, a blessed 2022, filled with a lot of love in your lives, accomplishment, abundance, happiness, unity, and immense spiritual growth, because I do see 2022 as a year of great opportunity for spiritual growth. And I pray that all that be yours to experience.